Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're on the set of a Nollywood blockbuster. The potential is massive. This film could go global, a true cultural export. You have a young, energetic cast brimming with talent and ideas, probably with a viral TikTok dance already choreographed for the promotion. But then you meet the director. He's a veteran, and he means well, constantly reminding everyone of the good old days when he was a young man. The problem: he's trying to direct this 4K digital masterpiece while insisting on using editing techniques from the era of VHS tapes. He can barely handle the modern cameras, yet he has this confused death grip on the entire production, refusing to pass the baton to the young, capable crew waiting right there. That chaotic film set, full of brilliant potential but held back by leadership that's completely out of sync with the times, that's the most accurate picture of Nigeria today as it turns 65. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really diving into, well, the complex situation in Nigeria. It's this huge country, bursting with potential, resources, talent.
Absolutely. A real powerhouse, on paper at least.
Exactly. But it seems continually stuck. So our mission today is to get under the skin of that tension, the massive potential versus these really deep-rooted problems in how the country's run.
Yeah, we're talking economic stagnation, a huge gap between the generations, and also, importantly, how people actually, get by day to day, how they cope.
It's about understanding why this giant struggles so much.
Right. It's like digging into what the research calls a serious governance deficit. It's not just one bad policy or one corrupt official. It's systemic.
Systemic institutional decay, going way back.
Way back to independence, really, 1960. It's about how these institutions, or lack of strong ones, stop this really vibrant modern country from, well, achieving what it should.
So for you listening, this is about getting past the headlines, yeah?
Yeah.
Understanding why Africa's biggest economy and most populous nation finds it so hard to turn that wealth into, well, well-being for its people.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's kick off with Section 1. This really feels like the bedrock of the problem: corruption and economic stagnation. We hear oil curse all the time, but the analysis we're looking at suggests it's more complicated than that. It's more human.
It is. The research really points away from just blaming the oil. Oil brings money, sure, but the core problem identified is institutional failure. And that failure is driven by the political class.
How so?
Well, the descriptions used are pretty stark. Leaders consistently characterized as lacking vision, being egotistical, sometimes mediocre, often driven by tribal loyalties.
And opportunistic.
Yes, and opportunistically focused. There's this phrase that keeps coming up, defining the leadership style since the 60s.
Yeah.
Small money-minded.
Small money-minded. Let's unpack that. What does that actually mean when you're supposed to be running a massive, complex economy like Nigeria's?
It's kind of the opposite of long-term thinking, isn't it? A small, money-minded leader isn't focused on, say, building a refinery that'll serve the country for decades, or investing in an education system where the payoff might be 20 years down the line.
So what are they focused on?
Short-term gains.
Yeah.
Quick wins. Things that offer immediate, often personal, enrichment. Think contracts for maybe road maintenance rather than building a whole new highway network. Import licenses you can get a cut from, commissions on government purchases.
Right. The vision is limited.
Extremely limited. It's about grabbing what you can now. And that inevitably means diverting huge amounts of public money meant for developing the country, for everyone, into private pockets.
Systematically.
Oh, yes. It's described as monumental and systematic diversion. This constant, aggressive rent-seeking behavior, it just starves the real economy of the investment it needs to grow long-term.
Okay, but what about 1999, the return to democracy? Didn't that change things? Weren't hopes really high then?
Hopes were incredibly high. There was a massive sense of optimism. But the sources we've looked at suggest that, unfortunately, the leaders who came in then, well, they largely failed to meet even the basic expectations.
Basic governance. Service delivery.
Pretty much. And this consistent failure, it hasn't just led to disappointment. It's actively fueled social problems, social vices.
Right.
It pushes people towards, informal or even criminal ways to survive because the formal system isn't working for them.
Desperation sets in.
Exactly.
You mentioned the oil revenue earlier. Nigeria has made a lot of money from oil over the years. We've seen GDP growth sometimes, some big infrastructure projects.
So there has been income.
But if corruption acts like this hidden tax, as you said, how does that specifically sabotage development day to day?
Okay, think about it on two levels. First, the big picture, macroeconomics.
Right.
Relying so heavily on oil makes the whole country vulnerable. Global oil prices go up and down wildly, right?
Yeah, volatile.
So the national budget is constantly unstable. You can't plan for the long term, say, a 5-year education strategy if your main source of income could suddenly drop by half next year.
Right. Impossible to plan.
Then there's the hidden tax effect. Globally, it makes foreign companies hesitant. Why invest big money in Nigeria if you know you'll have to deal with opaque rules, endless bureaucracy, and probably pay bribes just to get things done? The risk and the cost go way up.
So less foreign investment.
Significantly less than there could be. And domestically, that siphoned money is money not going into the absolute basics. Healthcare, schools, decent roads, reliable electricity.
These aren't luxuries.
Absolutely not. They're the engines of a modern economy. If you don't invest in them because the money's disappearing, the whole national project just grinds to a halt, or at least moves incredibly slowly.
And we see the real-world impact of this theft in specific programs that were meant to help people. Let's talk about NETOPEP, the National Poverty Eradication Program. What was that supposed to do?
NETOPEP had a really good goal, on paper. It was about training rural workers, giving them vocational skills so they could earn a living, become self-sufficient, reduce poverty at the grassroots.
Sounds good. How much money went into it?
In 2006, the allocation was significant, via $1.1 billion. The aim was to empower thousands of people. But the follow-up reports showed a pretty shocking level of failure. By 2007, huge numbers of people had just abandoned the program.
Why? Were they just not interested?
It doesn't seem like that was the main issue. The problem was the structure itself was compromised. You hear about potential ghost workers' names on the list who weren't actually there, training facilities that were inadequate or non-existent, procurement scams where the funds meant for tools or materials just vanished.
So the money didn't reach the people it was intended for?
Largely, no. The reports mentioned over 258,000 individuals supposedly abandoned the program without actually doing any productive work. The money went somewhere, but the poverty didn't.
That's incredibly bleak. And then there's UBE, the Universal Basic Education Program. The goal there is even more fundamental basic schooling for kids. The statistics you mentioned are just staggering.
They really are heartbreaking. Universal basic education, it's a cornerstone of development. Every child should have access to school.
But the reality?
The research indicates that over 64% of Nigerian children of school age still don't have access to formal education. 64%.
How does that happen? Where does the money go?
Again, it points to systemic corruption, often at the state and local government levels. Funds allocated for building classrooms, buying textbooks, hiring and paying qualified teachers, they get diverted.
So you end up with
schools literally without roofs. Teachers who haven't been paid in months or who lack basic training, textbooks that are decades old. The quality of education just collapses.
And this isn't just a bureaucratic failing, is it?
No, it's actively damaging the future. You're undermining the human capital of the entire next generation. It's hard to overstate the long-term consequences of that.
Okay, so this institutional failure, it's not just about wasted money or poor services. It creates a whole culture around it, right? Impunity, patronage.
Exactly. The failure is systemic, and it's fueled by these deep-rooted patronage networks. People often call it godfatherism.
Godfatherism. Explain that a bit more.
It basically means that political appointments, contracts, opportunities, they're not given out based on merit or competence. They're given out based on loyalty to a powerful individual, a godfather.
So your main job isn't to serve the public.
Your main job is to serve your godfather, to protect his interests, enrich his network. Public service becomes secondary or even irrelevant. Competence doesn't matter as much as loyalty.
And this feeds into something we hear about a lot, stomach infrastructure. Can you paint a picture of what that actually looks like on the ground?
Sure. Stomach infrastructure is, well, it's a very direct, very cynical form of politics. It means giving out immediate material rewards, cash, food, maybe a small generator in direct exchange for political support, especially votes.
So not long-term promises, but instant gratification.
Precisely. Bags of rice, packets of noodles, a few thousand naira, handed out right before an election. The transaction is right there. You support me, I fill your stomach for today.
And the effect.
It keeps voters focused on immediate survival needs rather than thinking about, which candidate has the best policies for education or healthcare 5 years from now. It short-circuits that kind of thinking and keeps the corrupt cycle going because the politician who offers the most immediate handout often wins, regardless of their track record or competence.
So when the whole system is bent, courts can be influenced, elections can be bought. What happens to the idea of democracy? Does it just lose meaning?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Legitimacy evaporates. If powerful people know they can buy votes, and if they get caught, they could potentially manipulate the courts to get off scot-free, then there's no accountability. Zero.
Impunity.
Total impunity. And the public response? Often it's deep cynicism. The sources talk about this cultural cognitive pillar where corruption becomes normalized. People just shrug and say, that's the Nigerian way.
Acceptance, or maybe just resignation.
Yeah, kind of collective resignation. And that's dangerous because it leads to less engagement, less demand for change.
Yeah.
People check out, which ironically allows the mediocrity and corruption to continue unchallenged.
That sense of resignation, that stagnation, it leads us right into section 2. This is where we see the real human cost, the tangible impact of all this.
Right.
The generational divide and the exodus of talent. This is our VHS director clashing head-on with the 4K crew.
Right, and the demographics here are just stark. You can't ignore them. Africa as a whole is incredibly young. Median age is just 19.7 years.
Wow, 19.7.
Yeah, and about 70% of the entire continent's population is under 30. Think about that energy, that potential. It's a massive engine if it's harnessed.
But the people in charge, the leaders.
That's where the disconnect is just huge. In 2018, the average age for heads of state across Africa was 64 and a half.
64 and a half versus 19.7.
It's a 44-year gap on average. Imagine the difference in worldview and values and understanding of technology of the modern world. It creates this profound disconnect.
Like the VHS director trying to manage a digital film set.
Exactly like that. You get governance that often resists change, that's maybe suspicious of new ideas, new technologies, and clings to old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
The priorities are just completely misaligned with the vast majority of the population they govern.
And for Nigeria specifically, this isn't just an interesting statistic. It's described as being on a knife edge. What does that mean?
It means there are two very different, very stark potential futures based on this demographic reality.
Okay, what's a positive future? The dividend.
The demographic dividend. If Nigeria can educate this huge youth population, create jobs for them, involve them properly in the economy and in governance, the potential is immense. You could see average incomes triple by 2030, theoretically.
How?
Because a young population means fewer dependents per worker, potentially higher savings rates, a bigger tax base, more consumers, more innovation. It could be transformative.
That's the dream scenario. What's the other side of the knife edge?
The flip side is, well, it's a demographic disaster. If you have millions upon millions of educated, ambitious, but unemployed and frustrated young people who feel completely shut out,
Yeah.
the result is almost inevitable. Widespread social unrest, conflict, maybe even state breakdown. The sheer number of young people means the consequences of failing them are potentially catastrophic.
And that potential disaster, that frustration, it fuels the Japa syndrome, doesn't it? This mass exodus we keep hearing about.
Absolutely. Japa. It's a Yoruba word meaning to run, to flee, to escape. And it perfectly captures the mood for many young, skilled Nigerians. It's a brain drain on a massive scale.
What do the numbers look like?
They're climbing fast. Back in 1990, there were maybe 450,000 Nigerian migrants abroad. By 2019, it was 1.4 million. And the sources suggest the rate has accelerated significantly since then.
Wow. What's pushing them out? It seems like a combination of things.
Yeah, the research points to 4 main interconnected push factors.
Let's break them down. First, the most obvious one. Economic hardship.
This is number one for most people. It's not just low wages. It's often no wages at all. Structural unemployment is huge, even for graduates.
University degree, no job.
Exactly. Or a job that pays so little you can't possibly build a life. It leads to real income poverty, material deprivation, and deep, deep frustration. Imagine being young, smart, qualified, and seeing absolutely no path forward in your own country.
You feel trapped.
Completely trapped.
Yeah.
So leaving isn't about rejecting Nigeria. It's about seeking a place where your skills are valued, where you can actually earn a decent living and have some predictability.
Okay, factor number 2. Insecurity. You can't build a life if you're scared for your life.
That's a huge one. Nigeria is facing multiple security crises simultaneously.
Yeah.
Insurgency in the northeast, banditry and kidnapping across the northwest and central areas, communal clashes, secessionist violence in the southeast.
It's relentless.
It feels relentless for many. The constant threat, the fear of violence, the feeling that the state can't protect you. It takes a massive psychological toll. For many young people, especially those with options, seeking safety and stability elsewhere becomes a rational choice.
Then the third factor, the daily grind. Infrastructure deficits.
Yeah, the lack of basic functioning infrastructure is just crippling. We're talking unreliable electricity, often no electricity for days, lack of clean running water, terrible roads that make commuting a nightmare, poor public health care.
Billions needed to fix it.
The deficit is estimated at over $2.3 billion. But for the individual, it's the daily reality. Trying to run a business when you need a generator running constantly, burning expensive diesel, it kills your profits.
So leaving is also about productivity.
For many, yes. They see functional infrastructure elsewhere and realize they could achieve so much more if they weren't constantly battling these basic failures. The constant darkness, the traffic jams, the broken hospital, it just wears you down.
And the fourth factor, ironically, is the very thing that was supposed to lift them up: poor education quality.
Right. The government just doesn't invest enough in education. That's 6.39% of the budget in 2024. It's way below the 15-20% UNESCO recommends.
And the result?
Crumbling schools, outdated textbooks, and curricula that don't prepare students for the jobs of today, let alone tomorrow. Lack of teaching materials.
So the best students leave?
Yes, the most motivated young people seek better education abroad. But it's worse than that, the teachers leave too. Skilled educators look for places where they're properly paid and resourced. So you're losing the students and the people who train them. A vicious cycle.
The cost of this chapa, it must be immense for the country. We saw some figures for doctors.
The loss of human capital is devastating. Take the medical field in 2023 alone. Over 1,400 resident doctors left Nigeria for places like the UK, US, UAE.
That's staggering.
Think about the years and the money Nigeria invested in training each one of those doctors. And now, that expertise is benefiting another country's healthcare system, while Nigeria faces critical shortages.
And it hits other sectors, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tech, education, engineering.
Yeah.
You name it. The brightest and best are leaving. It slows down economic growth, weakens key services, and it also sends a terrible message to the world.
What message is that?
It creates this global perception of Nigeria as a place without hope, a place that even its most talented young citizens are desperate to escape. It's a tragedy of wasted potential, really.
It truly is. Okay, so we've painted this picture of deep institutional problems, economic struggles, a massive brain drain. So how do people live with this? How do they function day to day? Which brings us to section 3. Coping with chaos humor as resistance and resilience.
This is where things get really interesting, psychologically and culturally.
Yeah.
Nigerians have developed this incredible ability to manage chaos, to adapt to tension and instability so well that, in a weird way, instability almost becomes normal, expected.
The backward slide you mentioned.
Yeah, one source called it a national talent for taking 2 steps forward, then inventing the backward slide. The system seems designed to frustrate, yet somehow life goes on. There's this resilience.
I remember seeing that survey from 2003 that called Nigerians the happiest people in the world, which seems paradoxical given everything we've just discussed. How does that work?
It's not simple happiness, like everything's fine. The analysis suggests it's more like laughter inseparable from fear. The humor isn't just for fun, it's a vital coping mechanism.
The coping mechanism.
Yes, and it works on 2 levels. It's a way for ordinary people, the subordinate classes, to mock the state, to subtly push back against authority they feel powerless to change directly.
And the second level?
It's psychological survival. It helps people cope with the sheer absurdity and excessive disorderliness, as one source puts it, of everyday life, the constant power cuts, the traffic jams, the bureaucracy. Laughing is better than crying, maybe.
So telling a joke about the government is actually a political act.
In this context, absolutely. It's what some academics call infrapolitics.
Infra what?
Infrapolitics. It just means political resistance that doesn't happen through formal channels like voting or protesting, but in everyday spaces, jokes, gossip, rumors, memes, on social media now.
Under the radar.
Exactly. It's the hidden transcript of resistance. By laughing at the failures of the state, people chip away at its authority, its seriousness. They kind of drain the official world of its power and meaning. If the leaders are figures of ridicule, it's harder for them to command respect or fear.
Let's make this concrete. Tell us that joke about the Nigerian hell. It really illustrates the point.
Ah, yes, it's a classic dark humor example.
Oh.
So a guy dies, goes to hell, and gets a tour. He sees the American hell electric chair, screams, but the queue moves fast. He sees the Russian hell bed of nails. Painful, moves slowly but steadily.
Okay.
Then he gets to the Nigerian hell. Same setup, promised electric chair, devil with a whip, bed of nails. But there's this massive, chaotic crowd of people just milling around waiting. A huge backlog.
Why? What's the holdup?
He asks the guide, who explains, well, first, there's never any electricity, so the electric chair hasn't worked in years. Second, somebody stole all the nails from the bed of nails. And third, the devil.
Oh.
He used to be a civil servant, so he just clocks in, punches his time card, and goes home.
Wow. Okay. That packs a punch.
Doesn't it? In one short joke, you've got critique of infrastructural failure, no electricity, systemic theft, stolen nails, and bureaucratic inefficiency and corruption, the lazy devil. It's incredibly sharp social commentary disguised as humor.
Devastatingly accurate, as you said. And there was another one, defining politics.
Yeah, often told in pidgin English, using a kind of family analogy. It basically says, the president is busy screwing the working class, the government is fast asleep, the people are being completely ignored, and the future, meaning the youth, is in deep, deep trouble.
Blunt.
Very blunt. It cuts right through any political spin. This kind of humor is the language of the people, expressing the reality of this situation in a way everyone understands instantly. No need for complex analysis.
But here's the crucial question, isn't it? This humor, this resilience, it's clearly essential for coping. But could it also be a problem? Does laughing at the chaos actually stop people from organizing to fix it?
That's the potential double-edged sword, yes. It's the central, painful question. The resilience is remarkable, necessary even. But if instability becomes your comfort zone, if you just learn to laugh it off and manage the chaos,
does it reduce the urgency?
it might. It could potentially dampen the drive for collective, organized political action needed for real structural change. You adapt so well, you forget to demand something better.
So resilience is vital, but it needs to lead somewhere.
Exactly. It needs to translate into tangible demands for change, into formal political engagement. Which brings us nicely to our final section, the ongoing struggle for that kind of inclusion.
Okay, let's move into section 4. The next generation's fight for inclusion and structural reform. Because despite everything we've said, young Nigerians aren't just passively coping or leaving, they are fighting for a seat at the table, right? Trying to wrestle the controls from the VHS director.
Absolutely. There are definite efforts, both within Nigeria and drawing on wider African movements, to bridge this gap. Civil society has been really active.
Like the hashtag #NotTooYoungTurban movement. That got a lot of attention.
It did, and for good reason. It was a significant success story. It was a youth-led movement across the continent, but in Nigeria, it specifically pushed for and achieved the passage of the age reduction bill.
And what did that bill actually do?
It lowered the minimum age requirements for candidates running for several key offices, including president and state governors.
So making it legally possible for younger people to run?
Yes. It formally removed an arbitrary age barrier, making the political field potentially more competitive, more open to new ideas and energy. It was a real win, driven by young people using smart advocacy and, modern campaign techniques.
Okay, so that's about getting into elected office. But there are other ways young talent gets involved, right? These special advisor or special assistant roles.
Yes. These SAF roles are another important pathway, in theory. They're designed to bring highly skilled young professionals, technocrats, often with international education or experience, directly into government ministries and agencies.
Without needing to be career politicians.
Exactly. They bypass the often messy, expensive process of running for office. It's meant to be a way to inject expertise, fresh perspectives, and technical skills directly into the policy-making process, a channel for nation building.
Sounds ideal. So why isn't this solving the problem? If you're bringing in bright young people, shouldn't things be changing faster?
Well, this is where the structural weaknesses really show up again. The problem is that these SA roles in Nigeria, they generally lack a formal, institutionalized framework. Meaning their effectiveness, even their existence, often depends entirely on the person who appointed them the principal. Whether that's the president, a governor, a minister, it relies purely on political will.
So if our VHS director appoints a young 4K editor as an advisor, but then gets annoyed or changes their mind,
the advisor is out, instantly. Their projects might get scrapped, their influence vanishes overnight. The role is incredibly vulnerable to political whims.
So it's not embedded in the system.
Not really. It's often used to advance the principal's personal agenda rather than a long-term institutional goal. There's rarely proper training or induction for these essays, and crucially, any positive changes they do manage to initiate often disappear when the principal leaves office. It doesn't outlive political will, as the research puts it.
And this informal setup, it causes problems within the government machine too, doesn't it? Friction with the regular civil service?
Huge friction. It creates what's described as a chasm. These SAs are often paid much higher salaries than career civil servants. Sometimes their salaries are even funded by international donors to match private sector rates.
And the career folks see this.
And they see these young, often externally funded outsiders coming in, seemingly favored, getting high pay, often due to political connections. And it breeds massive resentment. Understandably, perhaps. It undermines morale and cooperation within the ministries.
So even if a young person gets a foot in the door as an advisor, the structure makes it difficult. And getting that foot in the door in the first place, especially in formal politics, is still incredibly hard.
It starts right at the bottom. There's this pervasive belief among young Nigerians that you need connections just to get anywhere. And even with connections, finding decent work is tough.
And politics itself.
The financial barrier is immense. Forget just the cost of running a campaign, which is huge. We're talking about the need to potentially pay bribes just to get nominated by a party or to work your way up the internal ladder. The system requires money and connections that most young people simply don't have.
It feels designed to keep them out.
It effectively reinforces the dominance of the older, wealthier political class. It creates this powerful feeling of exclusion among the youth.
Okay, so relying on the goodwill of individual leaders isn't enough. These advisory roles need proper structure. What's the alternative? What does real reform look like?
The consensus points towards needing an intergenerational co-leadership approach. But critically, the reforms have to be institutionalized.
Meaning written down, formalized.
Yes, embedded in law and process, with clear mandates for youth inclusion, specific targets, accountability mechanisms. Things that will last beyond the term of one president or governor. You have to deliberately build the pathways and make them permanent fixtures of the system.
Are there examples elsewhere in Africa where this has been done more effectively, a model to look at?
Rwanda often comes up. They have a national professional internship program run by their development board. It's highly structured.
How so?
They place recent graduates in specific roles in public service, private companies, NGOs for a set period, like 12 months. There are formal contracts, trained supervisors who mentor them, and a system to track their progress and skills development.
So it's intentional pipeline building.
Exactly. It's a deliberate, institutionalized way to build a skilled workforce and feed trained, experienced young people into public service and the wider economy. It's not just relying on ad hoc appointments.
That sounds worlds away from the current Nigerian SA system.
It really is. For Nigeria, the recommendation is clear. The special advisory system needs to be codified. That means standardized recruitment processes, proper training, clear job descriptions linked to actual government priorities, not just the principal's whim.
And maybe a central database.
Yes, a formal database of qualified young experts could help depoliticize appointments. Make it about merit, about skills the country actually needs. The goal should be to build institutional capacity to absorb youth talent systematically, not just rely on these informal, often donor-funded models that can create as many problems as they solve.
So wrapping this deep dive up, Nigeria at 65 presents this stark, really profound paradox, doesn't it?
It really does.
On the one hand, you have this incredibly young, dynamic, talented, often highly skilled population just bursting with potential. A demographic dividend waiting to happen that could genuinely transform the country.
The potential is undeniable.
But on the other hand, that potential is being actively constrained, held back by this entrenched, aging political leadership. By systemic corruption, this small, money-minded focus on short-term gain and institutions that just aren't fit for purpose. It really is the VHS director trying to run a 4K show.
And the way people cope, that amazing resilience, the sharp critical humor, it's essential for survival in that chaos, that ability to laugh at the absurdity of it all.
But there's that risk, as we discussed, that managing the chaos becomes the norm and it actually hinders the push for the deep structural changes that are needed.
Right. The coping mechanism itself might inadvertently help perpetuate the status quo. It's a complex balance. The institutions are fundamentally failing to harness their greatest asset, their own young people.
And maybe the most challenging thought to leave with is this. The solutions Nigeria desperately needs for its economy, for its governance, they aren't necessarily external. They're already there within the country. They lie within that ambitious young generation. But right now, that talent, that energy is being exported. It's being mobilized to build other economies, not their own. So for Nigeria to truly thrive, somehow the leadership has to change the game. They need to make political power less about personal enrichment, less attractive purely for financial gain.
To make space.
To make space for people young and old who genuinely see governance as a serious commitment, not a route to wealth, but a way to build the nation. That seems to be the fundamental shift required.